Hello, everybody, and welcome back to our little GT Planet show podcast. I mean, I guess we probably should actually call it a podcast at this point.
Yeah.
'Cause when we started doing these, I was like, I don't want to call it a podcast because everybody calls everything a podcast, but that is kind of what it is. So, for lack of a better term, I think we might roll with that. Maybe that'll be our big announcement for this for this
Yeah.
episode.
Well, between us, we've always called it a podcastant, for those that
Yeah,
didn't know.
exactly.
That's
Podcast,
all we ever
not
call it when the three of us message each other. We call it a podcastant. So I'm going to stick with that behind the scenes. But yes, it's very much as a podcast at this point.
Yeah, we haven't done one of these in a while, but we've actually had quite a flurry of news here. So I wanted to get all of us together to talk about this. And the main headline, of course, is the PS5 Pro and the latest update that GT7 just released that takes advantage of all of those new features. And this is the sort of thing that doesn't come around very often. So it's been interesting, to say the least, to see exactly what that update includes. And actually just got done publishing my big review on GT7 with the PS5 Pro, and let me tell you, that was a tough review.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, it's been how many years now since we've had new hardware, essentially? Because, that's one of the beauties of what we have now is that software can be updated and updated and updated. But eventually it gets to a point where it's maximized the hardware, and that's the bit that then needs to move on. So to have that final sort of change for this hardware now, it's great to see it. And obviously it unlocks even more doors further down the line, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. And I think with Polyphony, of course, they're always pushing the envelope. And so I'm sure that they were very happy to get those PS5 Pro dev kits and try to figure out what they could do with the additional horsepower. But I must say the review itself was really difficult for me because I recorded a bunch of footage with the standard PS5 before the review started, because I thought, well, I want to be able to get this out as quickly as possible. So I recorded a bunch of footage, and then I got the PS5 Pro out of the box and hooked it up and started recording the footage on it and playing with it. And I thought in the flat screen in particular, I'm thinking to myself, there's not really a lot of changes here. And then, of course, I did the PSVR 2, and those changes were more obvious with the positional reprojection feature. And so then I started to write out my review. And then I started looking at the footage that I had recorded and started putting it side by side. And I'm like, wait a minute, there actually are quite a few changes.
Yeah.
And then to make a long story short, I ended up reviewing it again, or rewriting the script, and the article review for that. I actually wrote it 3 times because I kept going back in and looking at the footage, and every time I would look at it again, I would find something new that I had missed before. It's one of those things that is, it's really, the improvements are subtle. But when you see them side by side, it actually jumps out at you what is different. And actually, until I put the footage side by side, there were a lot of things that I didn't really notice. I knew with PSSR, for example, PlayStation Spectral Super Resolution mode, that was something that I was playing with, and I knew the picture was softer. I could tell the image was softer, and I could tell there was more happening in interior view. There was more details, but I couldn't really put a finger on it. Then I went side by side, and I'm like, whoa, this is actually dramatic.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's that there are going to be differences that you'll only notice in like certain game modes, or even with it being a racing game that covers so many different spectrums of daylight, daytime, and weather. Sometimes you might notice reflections more than in other circumstances. With night racing as well, and it's great that they project the reflections so much. That's one thing that coming from the likes of iRacing and Assetto Corsa for me, to come over to Gran Turismo, I've noticed just how much fidelity they have on the reflections. Like, you look at a car in photo mode and you can see details on the car next to it without looking at it. And that's the thing. It's the fact that it projects that. Because a lot of times in games, I've played it in many games where you've got like water in front of you. If you look down and down and down, if there's land the other side of that water, it won't reflect if you look far enough down because the game hasn't projected it for real the other side yet, so you won't get that reflection of it. But with Gran Turismo, you don't have to have an object on screen for it to reflect. It's just incredible that it works like that, isn't it?
I think that kind of sums up the PS5 Pro in a bit of a nutshell. And the PS5 Pro visual improvements with GT7 is that it really comes down to reflections and lighting improvements. And
Yeah.
I guess those are kind of the same thing, but more so than frame rates or resolution. Of course, it has the 120 hertz. Of course, the standard PS5 had that as well. But the in the 8K, people aren't really talking about that. There's not really a lot of interest in that. But the new effects with PSSR, that's really the headline grabbing feature. But as you mentioned, that's also one thing that made it so hard to review, because if you don't set up the conditions just right, then you're not going to see a lot of improvements. And you'll see that in my review footage. And I encourage everybody to go watch that. And we'll be sure to link that in the description of this video. But you'll see some even interior footage where the changes are most pronounced. You'll see things that you'll see some in-car footage, and there's really nothing to see. It looks basically the same. But then the low light conditions, when you have the light sources from other cars and the light sources from the track, that is when you start to see a real change. And that's when it really jumps out at you. But yeah, it's a really tough sell. It's a really tough sell for Sony and for this new hardware, because getting a lot of negative comments on the video. Of course, negative comments on every video. It's the internet, but
it happens.
The trolls are definitely having a feeding frenzy with this PS5 Pro update, because for the vast majority of footage that you're looking at, there really aren't a lot of changes, especially when you're watching something back on YouTube. So I think the PS5 Pro is it's, especially for the cost. If it was like maybe $100 or £100 or something more expensive, people might be a little bit more accepting of it. But the fact that it's so much more expensive, there's not a lot of reasons to upgrade, especially for Gran Turismo. I don't really pay attention to a lot of the other games, but the improvements are definitely minor.
Well, that's the thing as well. It's that when you're doing the research to see why would I upgrade to this, why would I move on to this, like you say, if you're just watching it in a 1080p video on YouTube, then you're not going to get that experience of it. It's frustratingly for a lot of people something that you'll only notice the difference when you've got one and when you've already got it, or you've got the chance to, not everybody's got access to it to use PSVR. I've got a few friends that have got it, so I can try that out, but not everybody will have that same ability to find out before they try it. So it can be a very frustrating thing, that, and it's kind of understandable that goes hand in hand with the trolls, because people see a video and they go, oh, it's no different, because they can't get that depth of how different it is.
Yeah, definitely true. And I could see it in the footage, because I would record the footage, for example, without PSSR on, and I would look at it and I would say, okay, this looks clearer. Like the picture has more crispness to it. And then I would review the footage that I captured, and I'm capturing it at full bit rate, full 4K, full fat, as much quality as I can get out of my capture card. But I would look back at it and I'm thinking, this did not translate at all to what I was seeing. And then, of course, I state that in the review, and people say, oh, you're biased and all this stuff. And it's like, I swear it looks a little different. But if I was not paying really close attention to this, I mean, it's all I worked on for about 5 days. So I got to know the PS5 Pro more than I ever wanted to. I'll say that. But I can see where someone, an average consumer who goes out and spends a lot of money on these things, thinking that they're going to get these amazing upgrades, and they hook it up, they immediately disconnect their PS5, their old one, and it goes back in the box, or they give it to a friend or family member or sell it or whatever. They never hook it up again. They're going to hook up their PS5 Pro, and they're going to be looking at it saying, I don't really see much of a change here. It's
Yeah.
when I went back to the PS5, which I had to do to record the necessary footage. It's when I went back that I started to appreciate what the PS5 Pro had actually done. But just plugging it in straight away, it was not immediately obvious. So I think there may be more negative impressions from consumer reviews from people just going out and buying a PS5 Pro who had an older PS5 that may be a little disappointed because they're not going back and checking out. So
Yeah.
I'm going to be curious to see over time what the general consensus about the Pro is, because it's it's a very subtle upgrade. Let's be
Yeah.
honest here. The PSVR I think is the most convincing upgrade.
Yeah.
That was the thing for me that made me say, okay, I'm not regretting this purchase now, because when I went back to the PS5 on PSVR 2, it was like, ooh, what happened? I thought
Yeah.
the PSVR 2, for anybody who doesn't know, it's very finicky in terms of how it's placed on your head. So if you are just a little bit off with the angle that the screen is to your eyes, it will look blurry. It'll look a little bit out of focus, and it has to be in just the right spot. I think that's one reason a lot of people get upset when they try it out and then they say, "Oh, it doesn't look great to me. It looks, really, really fuzzy." And it does if you don't get it positioned exactly right. When it does, it's good, but you got to get it there. But I kept thinking I had done that, and I kept thinking I can't get it right for some reason. And then I realized, no, it is right. This is just what it looks like on the standard
Yeah.
PS5 without the positional reprojection. And I think that I was kind of surprised at how little publicity there was around this. It feels like PlayStation and Sony did not really talk much about VR at
Mm.
all or potential improvements to PSVR 2 on the Pro. So I was not expecting much improvement at all. So I think it's more of a Gran Turismo thing. I think this is more of a Polyphony Digital
Yeah.
project and enhancement, but it definitely improves it. I swear it looks like there's a minor upgrade to the VR hardware itself. Really an exciting change, which I'm surprised has not been publicized more. But I think PSVR 2 has been probably a bit of a disappointment for Sony corporate because you just don't hear that much about it these days.
No. No, they really don't. I mean, I like to say I've got a few friends that have got a headset, close friends of mine, but they're the only people I know that have got one. And everybody that I see gaming and sim racing all over Facebook and all over any social media, I never hear people talking about it other than you when you're doing the tests and the videos and things when we get a new car, for example, to go out and take a new car out on a circuit or when there's an update.
Well, I mean,
That's all I hear.
we do have plenty of members on GT Planet who, obviously, in the daily races discussion thread, they have transitioned to PSVR 2 and will not go back.
Yeah. That's I find that interesting about VR. I mean, I get motion sick, so maybe I'm biased against it, but I've always found that with VR versus screens, in competitions you will always see screens because it's always the same viewpoint, it's always fixed. And VR, while you do get a better sort of field of view and immersion of what you've got around you, it often actually we've seen in other sims that it causes drivers to sort of take it for granted what space they've got and their driving becomes a bit more sloppy as a result. It's not always correlating, but I find it interesting that people, especially in an online sense as well, in the daily races, go in that direction.
It's something that every time I put it on, I'm surprised at just how good it is. And having tinkered with the VR on the PC side of things, it's just an incredible hassle.
Yeah.
And
It is.
with PSVR 2, you just plug it in and it works, which is amazing. And it works really well. But it is more, and I talked about this in my review for PSVR 2, it's more of a occasion to use it, for me anyway. You do, sometimes it will ask you for no reason to rescan your surroundings. And you're like, oh, I just want to play. And then you kind of have to go through the setup process for no obvious reason at all. And you have to look all around and do all that. I mean, it's not, in the grand scheme of things, it's no big deal at all, but it's still, an inconvenience. And then the other thing is, although you can get through the motion sickness, and because I was an issue that I struggled with at first, and that's something I was really concerned about when I first got the PSVR 2 headset. But it's so much better than previous generations of hardware that it's not a big deal. But there are still situations where there's tracks that I will not drive on. I find that it's elevation changes in tracks for me. So like Laguna Seca, I cannot do the corkscrew. Road Atlanta, I cannot do that. There are just situations, and I just feel it even after all this time. And I also think that you start to lose a little bit of that tolerance for VR if you don't play with it every single day, or at least once a week. But if I don't hook it up for, say, 2 or 3 weeks, or I go a little longer, and then I plug it in, I'm kind of like, okay, starting to feel a little bit of discomfort again. So it's just something else that makes it. There's an extra barrier between jumping in and playing, and then if I just want to capture footage, or just jump on the game and have some fun for an hour, a free hour. I find myself generally just hopping in and playing it on flat screen. But I definitely understand why people are addicted to VR. And those, I think, are the people who would benefit the most from a Pro upgrade, because once you get used to that positional reprojection, it's hard to go back.
I was going to say that I think the thing is it's relating it to a real world scenario. Like, most of us have been in cars and driven cars, so you know that when you press the brakes, you expect to jolt forward and backwards when you accelerate. And I think relating that to my own experience of it, I get really bad motion sickness. I mean, I've been on circuits in a few race cars as a passenger. I've been motion sick in every single circumstance and thrown up as soon as I got out of the car. It just happens. But I used to play a lot of, there's a flight simulator called Digital Combat Simulator, where you can do a lot of flying around in fighter jets and so on. As soon as I'm in the air and I don't already know what it would feel like to be in a fighter jet, I'm fine. I can loop and roll and be all sorts, like upside down, looking around me wherever. As soon as I'm on the ground and I've landed and I'm taxiing on the floor, I feel sick as a dog. It's horrible. So it's because it's relating it to what it should feel like, and my brain's going, there's something not right here. And I think that's why driving games, mainly, as well with VR, cause motion sickness, because it's relating it to an experience and what it should feel like.
Yeah, and things like that, like stopping, like if the car...
that's the worst.
Oh,
that's
it's
the worst.
Horrible. It's horrible. That's like the worst, and I never have been able to overcome that, even when I was at my most VR resistant, I guess is the word. VR acclimated resistant is probably a better word. Like bringing the car to a stop, like if I want to look around the interior or something like that, or you do a lot of stuff like that, especially when you're filming for these videos, things like that. Come to a stop and try to show details around the car. No. Backing up, reversing.
Oh,
that is never. The worst. Or spinning out. Like as soon as I start to lose control of the car, I just have to close my eyes. I just have to close my eyes.
Yeah, because you can hear when it's come to a stop.
yeah. And then that spinning, it's just you're done. I'm done. I'm done when it starts to spin. So it just adds a little bit of complexity to the racing experience, and it's always going to be a drawback with VR. I think no matter how good the headsets get, no matter how good the internal resolution is and how good the frame rates are, you're not spinning around in the car.
It's something that no software update could ever fix. No matter how long down the line, which is a huge shame.
No. And speaking of software updates, we do have other new content in this GT7 update, which I wanted to talk about. And we'll cover each of the cars here and discuss them briefly, give our thoughts. The Escort Cosworth. Ford Escort, that was an interesting one. What do you guys think about that?
That's my only review is yes for that. What a car. It's one of my favorite road cars of all time. I was absolutely buzzing to see it. The dashboard itself, I mean, I did the thumbnails for the VR videos that you did, Jordan, and I spent so long looking at the dashboard of that car. And it was a car that came out the year I was born, But, I grew up seeing them. I grew up loving them. And it's just pure nostalgia. Even the indicator stalks on that car. I love every little thing about it. And it's a riot to drive as well, because it sticks like glue compared to what you'd expect from it. But every so often it reminds you that it is a bit of a lunatic and it'll throw you into a barrier. So it's really, really good fun.
Yeah, that one is a fun. I was very pleasantly surprised. And then
I can't believe it came out the year you were born. How young are you?
the Mercedes, the W196R, Andrew. That's a really legendary race car and quite an interesting addition for Gran Turismo 7.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first 20 million credit card that we've seen added to the game. That obviously takes the crown off, I think, the McLaren MP4 when that came out 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, you can't even. It's just one of the world's most desirable cars. I think that actually one of the Monza bodied ones is coming up for sale at auction right now, and it's estimated at $50 million. That just tells you everything you need to know. Fangio, Sterling Moss, can't go wrong. I mean, I actually drove it in the first exhibition series for the Nations Cup that was just ending. For that, it was the final round. It was obviously we knew something interesting we thought something interesting was coming, because that round was TBA up until the update came out, and I drove it in that, and it was just such a lovely car to drive, and it sounds terrific as well.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the thing. You expect a car like that to, you're doing 160 mile an hour in a straight line. You hit the brakes and find out that they're actually milk bottle tops, and it's not going to slow down, and it's not going to turn because the tyres are this wide. But I first drove it at the Nordschleife because I thought, if I'm going to drive it anywhere, lob it around the Nordschleife. And it installs so much confidence in you as a driver. It's incredible how well it handled, because I thought, you know what? I'm going to find the limits and I'm going to find a barrier very quickly and stuff this 20 million quid car into a wall. And I didn't. And I couldn't believe it. It just handles so well compared to what you'd expect, being the narrow-minded fool that I am. But it was just awesome. It's a mega bit of kit.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite from the update for sure. And I had the same impressions. I thought, okay, now I know why this car is so legendary and made so many drivers legends. If it's this easy to drive, no wonder that they were able to be so successful with this thing, because it's just so easy to drive. And of course, that's the first thing that I wanted to record in VR. And to be honest, I was dreading it, because I thought, oh, this is going to be, I'm going to be spinning a lot. This is not going to be fun to record. And I always try to do my best, because the trolls will, of course, have a field day if I don't drive well in any of the videos that we put out. So I'm like, boy,
they love watching me fail at the daily races.
Yeah,
I forget I've got a pit.
Driving chats.
Someone did accuse you of Lando Norris driving.
What? I've not seen that comment yet. I'm going to find them. Wasn't the guy that took me out at Catalonia, was it?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh no.
But I was dreading driving that car and recording that footage, but I took to it immediately. A real treat to drive. So
absolutely.
I know where you're going now.
Opposite end of the spectrum.
You're going to the Mission X now, aren't you?
Yeah. What's that?
You're going to the Mission X now, aren't you?
Yes. How did you know?
Yeah.
How did you guess? That thing is terrible. Terrible, and I feel like I'm being kind.
I like it.
Andrew is very much, for all of you watching, Andrew's been very much outnumbered here in our group chat behind the scenes, with me and Jordan sharing a very similar opinion and calling it the Porsche Mission Shed instead of the Mission X. Because it's... don't get me wrong, the technology of it's awesome, but Andrew will say some lovely words about it, and Jordan and I will not.
Yeah, I enjoyed. I've driven it I've actually not used it on the wheel yet. I found it so easy and predictable to drive that I got a gold time in the time trial with the pad without really trying. I did like 5 laps flat,
and I couldn't get it to go in a straight line.
I love it. It sounds great. It's kind of slippery. I mean, the brakes are a little bit, but
I think the only solace I could find in it is that it looks like the Porsche 910 And if you don't know what the 910 is, I'll try and find some sort of copyright-free picture and put it up at this stage, because that is a cool-looking old car, and that was one of the first cars that Porsche ever used to sort of develop for top speed at Le Mans and make it all slippery. And as soon as I saw the front, I thought it was just a homage to that. The back of it looks like a Pininfarina Battista. If you don't know what one of them is, here's the back of that. But that is, an odd car, the Mission X, for me.
Yeah.
I like the idea of it. I love the idea of it. I think, with a few tweaks of how it drives, it could be incredible. But it just feels like it's got all the power in the world to put you in the next country in a couple of seconds. But then it doesn't want to stop and it doesn't want to turn. It's just... Yeah, I usually take a bit of time to try and give it a chance, but it just wouldn't behave in the way I wanted it to.
Yeah. I should clarify. My opinions are based on how it drives and what it's like to drive, not on what it looks like. I think it looks great. It's probably one of the best VR interiors in the game. It's just gorgeous to look at. I could not believe when it put me into the cockpit for the first time and I'm looking around, I'm like, this is stunning. And Polyphony have done a great job, and you can look over and see. I think it has it's like an analog clock over on the passenger side, in front of the passenger side seat, and you can see those 3-dimensional details in the clock, and it's over there. You really feel like you're in the car, more so than other cars. Even you really feel like you're in that place, and you can look around. The textures are amazing, and it's got that glass roof. There's so much glass around you. It's awesome to sit in, but as soon as you start driving it, it's like, okay, can't wait for this to be over.
Absolutely savage.
Yep.
Similar to the other Porsche.
Yeah, the 911 992 Turbo S. That's another car I did not get along with too well. Extremely fast, but hard to drive in my impressions.
Yeah, it's. Well, I think I said it in our group chat at the time as well that the Turbo S, when it was sort of below the GT3, it was always the sort of mid-range but quite spicy Porsche. It sort of fills a bit of a middle ground in the market where it's not quite a full-blown supercar like the GT3 RS, but it's sort of faster than a standard 911. It's not a poor man's 911 as they call some of them. But the fact that it still now has over 600 horsepower. And, you don't have to go back that long to when a car had 600 horsepower and people were like, whoa, how much? Like, that's crazy. And now this is like a normal mid-range acceptable 911. It's just bonkers fast in a straight line. I mean, I drove it to mimic your laps at Deep Forest. And even there down the straight, you're doing 160 mile an hour. And that's faster than the GT3 car gets down there. It's just bonkers. But again, like with you, the corner exit for me was the issue. It felt like it wanted to, like as you were turning and maybe lifting off a little bit, the deceleration naturally and the engine braking made you think, right, I can plant my foot now and this thing is going to behave itself and fire me that way. But it just went in a straight line and it felt so odd. And it's weird to see that from two Porsches in one update as well, because they're considered the ultimate driver's cars. But, whether it's just the game not doing them justice or not, I don't know. But it didn't feel like it to me.
is basically it's the top of the range road car.
Right.
Once you start getting to the GT3 and obviously the GT2, previously, you're looking more at their track focus, their track toys. They're meant for the cornering speed. They're meant for the downforce. But the Turbo S is effectively the top of the range in terms of road cars.
Right.
So you kind of got that supercar performance, but the softness and the luxury. As soft as a 911 gets at any rate.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, I prefer the Mission X.
Even in what's the color called? Metallic dog turd or something like that.
German Racing Brown.
German Racing Brown.
Well, and of course, last but certainly not least, is the Jimny, the Sierra JC. I think it is Sierra JC edition. I know that's something that you've spoken about on our forums and stuff. The difference between
I've driven a lot of Jimnys now. I actually did the original UK product launch, and I've genuinely forgotten when it was, but I think 2017-ish. And I did not get along with the car at all because the braking and the steering is Well, let's say it's
Marshmallow.
esoteric. It's better than the original. The original Jimny is one of the worst cars I've ever driven in my entire life. I nearly crashed it in a car park because it didn't stop from crawling speed. But the current one, it has grown on me. So I very recently drove the. So we only, because of the engine in it, which is the 1.5 litre for the world market, the emissions are high. It's a fairly agricultural engine. So they now can't sell it as a road car. So they sell it as a cargo van. They removed the rear seats. There's a cage in there, and it's now a van. It's called the Jimny LCV. And I drove that recently, and actually, I kind of got a lot more used to it, and I kind of felt like I'd been a bit unfair to it originally. But it was hilarious to throw about the Dales as I was going over to a secret project, which we're going to talk about hopefully soon. And yeah, it's really grown on me as a car, and obviously now it sits alongside its narrower K-bodied sibling that was introduced, I think, at the beginning of this year, and it's great amount of fun.
Do you think that you could potentially, with the real one, do what you can do with the Jimny in the game, and if you do brake hard enough, it will do an endo? Because I raced it around, it was Grand Valley that it was in the weekly challenges, wasn't it? And I figured I was going to just take them on and just give it a go. It gave me a reason to buy the car, because it wouldn't be normally something that I'd buy in Gran Turismo, a Jimny like that. But I thought, you know what, stuff it. We'll get one for the challenges, do it up a little bit. And honestly, I was braking that hard that it was just skating down the hill on its front bumper the whole time. And it's one of the funniest things to race in the game, I must admit. And it's actually quite challenging.
You've got very grippy tyres and solid brakes in the game. The real car, the brakes are not that good.
No.
The tyres are not that good, but it does flop about on the suspension in a hilarious fashion.
Oh, it's great. It's a riot.
Youngest daughter actually demanded to get into the back of it. So I shut her in, and then I just grabbed hold of the roof rails and shook it from side to side, and it was like getting 20 degrees either side. And she was going, "Yeah, it's like being in a washing machine."
But with more power, with less power, I should say.
Everybody loves the Jimny.
Oh, we do, yeah. It's just so charming, isn't it?
It is. It was kind of an interesting collection of cars to put together in such a big update. It feels like updates are big near the end of the year like this because there's a lot of people giving attention to Gran Turismo, and we have the World Finals, which we'll be talking about in just a second. But yeah, it's kind of you just never know what Polyphony is going to put together for these updates.
No, like they've got a Suzuki Jimny and a £20 million legendary race car in the same update. It's just, it's what we love about them, isn't it? You know, it's the tagline of, right, what are they doing now?
The concept Porsche that was the company's own 75th anniversary present to itself.
Yeah, exactly. It's cars of all different sort of weights to the industry, you know, from all sorts of angles as well, whether they're historic, whether they're brand new, or whether they're just a consumer item in the middle. It's great.
The Escort was one of the most commonly requested cars in our suggestion forum as well. And we've actually seen quite a few from the suggestion forum, from the higher ranks of the cars that people have been voting for. Quite a few of them have come into GT7.
I did not know that there were that many that had been suggested and actually brought to the fore. That's quite interesting to know. So get your suggestions in, everyone.
Definitely.
Lob them in. You never know.
Get voting on them and get them up there.
Yeah, you never know what they've got their hands on.
You never know.
You never know.
So the World Finals are coming up in Amsterdam. And I think that I'm really looking forward to this event for several reasons. The World Series, it feels like this year has been scaled down significantly because
100%.
We've had these events in Montreal and let's see. Wait, where's one in Europe? Remind me.
Prague?
Prague, yes, of course.
Yeah.
And Tokyo. And these were scaled down compared to all the other events we've seen previously since this thing started because they were condensed down to one day. There was no media involved, so we weren't there to cover them, and there was no other real announcements surrounding these events. They were kind of standalone things, and wasn't even sure if the World Finals were going to be scaled down as well. Fortunately, we did get an invitation, and I'll be attending the finals in Amsterdam. But I'm excited, and I'm hopeful that this series is going to kind of get its mojo back, and hopefully Polyphony will continue to invest in these things and turn them into the show that they deserve to be, because it feels like it's kind of it's not taking a step back, but it's just been quieter this year overall. So I hope it gets its mojo back.
The qualification season was extremely brief, and
yes,
there was a good chunk of controversy, shall we say, about some of the driving in it. And actually, we have already seen the finals were originally announced as a 3-day event. So it was the Toyota Gazoo racing on the first day, manufacturers on the Saturday, and then nations on the Sunday. That's already been condensed into just the weekend. So we've got the Toyota and the manufacturers on the Saturday, and then the nations on the Sunday. And of course, they've been selling tickets for it as well. So hopefully there weren't too many people who bought Friday tickets only and now can't attend.
That's true.
It was also supposed to originally be in Abu Dhabi.
Yes,
that was actually on the official Gran Turismo website. That's not that wasn't a rumor that we were reporting on. That was actually an official thing that then it got taken off, because they typically like to save that as a surprise, I think. So that was probably published a bit early, but it wouldn't have been on there if it was not planned. And I'm assuming all of the turmoil in the Middle East, there's probably some concerns about having that in that area, in that part of the world, that region. But that might have been a reason for the switch, but we really probably won't know. They might have had scheduling conflicts or venue conflicts. Who knows? But Amsterdam was kind of a surprising choice for me, because we just had the event there last year with the launch of the movie. They had the movie premiere there, the Gran Turismo movie premiere, and that was just a year ago. So we're back. I know the venue is really nice. It's a very nice venue. So for everybody who has bought tickets to that and plans to attend, you've got a very nice place to enjoy the show. So that's a positive. And I'm hoping that this will be the chance for them to reveal the My First Gran Turismo demo, or whatever this thing is going to be, for lack of a better word. Andrew, what are you expecting for this thing?
Well, it's really tough to know, but I mean, what I would fundamentally expect is some kind of Gran Turismo 7 based experience, wherein some iconic combinations from previous Gran Turismo games are featured, but in GT7 clarity. So you're looking at maybe races taking place on tracks that have appeared in previous games, like Grand Valley. Obviously, it's significantly different now. Deep Forest, Trial Mountain. I would expect there to be some kind of GT2 Laguna Seca tie-in, because that was the very first real track that appeared in the series. So that's kind of what I'm anticipating. There's a lot of people think that it's going to be have all brand new content from old games that's not in GT7. I think that's a little bit optimistic, to be kind. I think it's going to be basically cherry-picked stuff from GT7 in a kind of a demo form, with some nostalgic UI and some old car and track combinations that are beloved of fans from previous titles.
I think you just need 3 items. You need Midfield Raceway, you need a Suzuki Escudo Pikes Peak, and you need a Suzuki Alto Works, and that's all you need. That is all you need, the Works model of the Suzuki Alto. That sums it up.
Yeah.
But no, it's going to be super interesting to see, one, what it contains, and B, what the reaction to that is, because we know that as soon as people don't get what they want, they love to shout about it online. But I think that some of the diehard fans are going to be really pleased, because Polyphony, they know what people want. They know what the diehard fans want. They can't always give it to them, but when they get the chance to put something together like this, they don't often miss, to be fair. There will always be people that aren't happy with it, but I think it's going to be, like Andrew's pointed out, a great sort of nostalgia, I hope.
Yeah, likewise, I agree. I'm really curious to see what they're going to do with this. They've been very quiet about it until now. It was just sort of like, here's this thing, and everybody's like, what? And there's been nothing about it, no leaks, no nothing. So I'm optimistic that this World Finals event will be sort of the reveal and the announcement of what it's going to contain. And fingers crossed, it's a good one. I think I know what we all want to see, and that's some famous old tracks like Midfield, maybe an Apricot Hill or an Autumn Ring. I know I would love to see some of those classics return, but
Special stage Route 5.
Oof.
Or 11. Oh, even 11.
Tokyo R246. Okay.
Yeah,
I gotta
okay.
go. Let's not get carried away here.
Just all of them. Just all of them.
Yes.
That'd be an easy way of not missing. Just put all of them in polyphony. You heard it here first. You know what we want.
Yeah, get to work. You've got like about a week.
Yeah, it's just Gran Turismo 8 at this point. Just do it.
Yeah. It's going to be really interesting to see how this plays out, and if it will be. There's so much we don't know. Will this be like a demo that's available forever, or will this be a limited time thing? Will the content that's in the demo come to GT7 if there's something exclusive in the demo? There's just so much that we don't know right now. It's going to be fun to watch, a little special Christmas present for the community this year.
Definitely.
So that's going to be exciting. Let's see. The last thing I do want to talk about before we go is Assetto Corsa EVO. There's been a lot of news on that over the past couple weeks. From a lot of it came out of the Sim Racing Expo, which was held in Europe a few weeks ago, and that's been really interesting. And we've seen some really encouraging news on that front. Andrew, I know you did an article on that about the car options and the car settings. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so I mean, this was originally an interview that appeared on an Italian website. So obviously, my Italian is not terrific. Everything in Italian that I know comes from playing Assassin's Creed. So there might be some translation issues in there, but essentially, what the impression is that what they want to do is have effectively like a real world showroom. So you will go in to buy the car. Then rather than buying the car like I don't want to flag Gran Turismo's duplicates where you have to go in and you have to buy the R33 Nissan Skyline GTR Midnight Purple 3 Special Edition. You could go in and say you want to buy a Nissan R33 Skyline and then pick a GTS or a GTR and then specify if you want the special paint and pick your interiors and your wheels and your sunroof and so on and so forth. I think that it could be very, very tricky for them to pull that off because there is actually surprisingly really a lot of regional variation with cars and car options. So there are some options on cars we can get in the UK, but you can't get the same options on a left-hand drive car in Europe, or vice versa. Or you could get them on a right-hand drive car in Ireland, but you can't get them on a right-hand drive car in the UK. So it's going to be fun to see how they manage it, but it's been something that I've personally been wanting in a racing game for ever. I can't think of any better way of doing it than going and buying this car and then specifying it the way that you want to specify it. And I think, you can recreate your own real car that way. It would be fantastic.
The only game or sim that I think that does that well enough for me is Euro Truck Simulator 2, to be honest. I love my Renault T, and I love all the dashboard options I've got. It's brilliant. But, no, you're absolutely right, though. And you have to think about the scale of this thing, because they've got a load of manufacturers that they want to put in the game, a load of car models as well, and how it applies with the fidelity that they'll have to do it at to make it matter what you spec it with. If you're going to change an interior, if it's just in a game, then some people are going to see that and think, well, why bother? I'm not too bothered about what the interior looks like. For the people that do care, you're going to care if that middle panel is brushed aluminium or whether it's carbon fiber. My girlfriend's got a BMW Z3, and the first thing she looks at whenever she sees another one is whether it's got the brushed aluminium center console on it, and she'll ridicule anybody that doesn't have one. But at the same time, in a game, that might not matter to some people. It might do to others. So they need to make sure that every item possible on the interior, especially, I think, is going to be done in such a fidelity That's a massive, massive project. And there will be people that mod it, I imagine, further down the line that do the same, and they'll do, interior packs for certain cars and things. It really opens it up because Assetto Corsa works so closely with the community to be able to make it moddable. But I just think that to put themselves in a position where they've now announced this, that's quite a risk because they have to do so many separate, huge amounts of work to make it happen. It's going to be interesting to see whether they do pull it off.
Mm.
Yes, it certainly is.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, Andrew.
In essence, it's what car companies use to power their configurators.
Yeah, true.
So if you basically, if you go to, I like to do this a lot because I don't get paid very much and I can't afford cars. So I like to go to the configurators and, pick your options and select weird paint. I always pick purple because obviously I do.
Obviously.
But you pick weird paint colors and wheel options and try and kind of make your perfect Bentley Continental.
I go on Porsche quite a lot, you see. Yeah. I'm always on the Porsche one. The Porsche one's really good fun.
I'd like a Boxster, but then I'll just double the price of it with all of the options. But if you can imagine, if they work closely with a manufacturer, they could, I don't want to say just pull the configurator and put it into the game, but you can imagine how that sort of, the existence of configurators might help them in creating this.
Very true. Very true. And that's the thing, though, they'll have to get manufacturers to give it the nod, and I think it'll be a case of, like we've seen with many racing games before, that when it starts getting the ball rolling, you'll only have 3 or 4 manufacturers that have given it the full attention and said, okay, yeah, this is cool, we like this. There'll be others that'll sort of hang back and watch from a distance and go, that company's doing this, I wonder how that's going to go. Let's just wait. We know what we need to do if it works, and as soon as they see that it's good, they'll go, right, bang, they'll pull the trigger on it. So I think it could either go one way or the other with manufacturer involvement. There could be very few of them. There could be everyone. But that remains to be seen until it's out in the open and everyone's got an idea of what level it's at.
Yeah, it's certainly ambitious.
That's definitely the word for it.
I hope they haven't oversold the feature. I know I can think of another developer in the past which has sort of maybe oversold what they're working on, and they paid for it with in too much enthusiasm ahead of time, and then they sort of overpromised and then maybe underdelivered a little bit, because people's expectations, when you say something like that, they go through the roof. Yes, they go through the roof, as people naturally do. So I'm really hopeful for these guys, and I'm really excited about the game, though. I think it's going to it's definitely got a lot of really positive momentum right now, and I can't wait to learn more about it and see what these guys do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even with Assetto Corsa now, if I just want to drive rather than racing and going on the likes of Gran Turismo or iRacing, I've got a triple screen setup here. So for a bit of immersion, I go on Assetto Corsa because you can get almost any road car. You can drive it on just an endless road that isn't a racetrack. And just for driving and with how it looks, how it feels, how it sounds, it is possibly the most realistic or at least immersive one out there, because of how much it can offer, how wide the spectrum is of what you can do on it. So I think that we've now finally got a more up-to-date version, not just down to mods and content, but the actual core of how it all works and is processed. Now we've got this modernized version of it. It's just I think it's going to blow people's socks off initially with just how good it is in general, when you don't just look at what the content is that comes with it. Because people focus on that quite quickly, don't they? They see what content or what cars and tracks are in it, and they go, oh, well, it's not very good because it's not got this track or this car. But you need to look at just how good the driving is and how immersive it is, and other things aside from pure content.
Yeah, it's going to be really fun to watch. I think early next year, it's going to be sort of the main event. I can't wait to see what they come out with as we start to learn more. And I guess that'll pretty much wrap things up for us. I know we've got a lot coming in the weeks ahead with Amsterdam and my first Gran Turismo. So we'll have to get together again soon, make some more of these. There's going to be a lot to talk about. So hopefully everybody enjoyed this one. It's great to get on here with you guys again and have some actual news to talk about for once.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to
So
go
yeah.
find whoever it was that accused me of Norris-esque driving.
It was Jordan that accused Jordan of driving the Mercedes like Lando Norris.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, saves me a job. I thought you meant me. Sorry.
You're much more Verstappen-y.
Yeah.
Well, let's not get into that.
All right. On that note, let's wrap this up, guys. We'll see everybody next time. Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can see when we upload our next video, which I think will be probably sooner rather than later. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll catch you next time.